allegations and the conduct, because George Santos admitted himself to so many different lies, and because George Santos's lies were designed to defraud and deceive the voters in order for him to be elected, unlike many other public corruption cases. The Ethics Committee decided to move forward before the criminal case was completed. George Santos was provided extensive due process during that Ethics Committee investigation. He was given the opportunity to provide documents. He did not. He was given the opportunity to come and meet and speak with the committee. He declined that opportunity. That is due process. This is not a court of law. George Santos's liberty is not at stake. And the concept of being innocent until proven guilty does not exist in the Congress of the United States. It is not sufficient to be a member of Congress simply to not be a criminal. Our standards for who should vote on critical legislation, who should see classified information, who should represent 776,000 Americans in this body, does not hinge on whether or not you're simply a criminal. The evidence is overwhelmingly clear that George Santos violated not only the rules of the House, but every moral standard that this House has ever had, and that the integrity and the reputation of this House are being denigrated every single day that George Santos is here. Today we're going to have a vote. It'll be our third vote on expulsion. There's ample evidence from George Santos's own admissions as to why he should be expelled from Congress. But there is no rational or reasonable American that can read that 56-page ethics report and not conclude that George Santos should not be a member of Congress. It is impossible for any objective, rational person to read that ethics report and think, yes, this should be one of the 435 people in this country who makes our laws. The Republicans have protected him for 11 months. Not because they agree with his conduct, not because they think he's an upstanding person, but because they have put their own political interests over the integrity of the Congress. Today is an opportunity for the Republicans to do the right thing. Or, once again, will they put politics over the American people? And I'm grateful today to have behind me several concerned citizens of New York 3, constituents of George Santos, who are here to talk about what a travesty it is that he has been representing them for 11 months, and what a horror it would be if he continues to be their representative. George Santos has not represented the interests or the needs of the 3rd District of New York. And it is long past time that Republicans stand up for doing the right thing, not the politically expedient thing. So first I want to introduce Jody Cass, who can give some brief remarks about the perspective on the ground in New York 3. Jody? Oh, sorry.
Good morning, everybody. First, thank you so much to Congressman Dan Goldman, Congressman Richie Torres, and Congressman Robert Garcia. Without you, I don't know where we would be. It's unbelievable to be an American without a representative that you can rely on in Washington for anything. So we have come to Representative Goldman, Representative Garcia, and Representative Torres over and over again, and they've always been there for us. So really, thank you so much. Yesterday, during the debate, we heard a lot about precedent. So we're here to tell you that George Santos's lies are indeed unprecedented. He has never represented the will of the people of New York '03. So folks are worried about, is there going to be a danger if we get him ousted, expelled without a criminal conviction? I would say it's far more dangerous to send the message to the American people that you can lie your way into Congress. You can perpetrate the largest election fraud on the American electorate ever, and then you should just go right ahead and serve in the highest bodies that are making the most consequential decisions about the American people. What does that tell other candidates? What does that tell our young people? Clearly, it is far more dangerous to leave him there. So how did we get George Santos? How did we in New York '03 end up with this charlatan, this liar, this criminal as our congressman? So if you go back and you look at the paperwork and you look at the emails and the texts and the press, you'll see it was actually a very conscious decision by the New York and the Nassau County political machine, the GOP political machine. And what I'm talking about here is Representative Elise Stefanik and GOP chairman of the party, the Republican Party, Joe Cairo. It's very clear that the knowledge about about Santos's frauds were known a full year before the election. There was plenty of time for them to choose a different candidate. You've all heard about the vulnerability study. That came out a long time before the election. What they should have done is look for a candidate with some integrity. But instead, Joe Cairo and Elise Stefanik decided to double down on this guy. And here we are, a year later. Yes, as Congressman Goldman said, everybody knows that George Santos does not belong in Congress. So how do we resolve this? We have been reaching out to our Republican leaders on Long Island and across New York State for 11 months to get their help. Congress, the House of Representatives, is run by Republicans. The only way we can get him out is if the Republicans decide it's time to get him out. So we've been in touch with Joe Cairo, we've been in touch with Elise Stefanik, we've been in touch with all 5 of the what known as the vulnerable Congress members who came in as part of the freshman team with George Santos, and I'm talking here about Congressman LaLota, Congressman D'Esposito, Congressman Lawler, Congressman Molinaro, and Congressman Williams. They were all elected and they were put forward by the same corrupt political machine that put forward George Santos, and we have been trying to get them to do the right thing for 11 months. For 11 months, we have had a tremendous amount of lip service from these folks. So is today going to be different? Are we going to get more lip service from them? Are they going to say they want him out? They're going to say that he's unfit, that he's a stain? Maybe vote to expel him, but actually do nothing to get their colleagues to actually do the right thing and vote to expel Santos? If this vote fails today, it is an absolute reflection on Congressman LaLota, Congressman D'Esposito, Congressman Lawler, Congressman Williams, and Congressman Molinaro. And what it speaks to that too is their weakness, their inability to get their colleagues to vote to expel this charlatan. It is so clear that if they can't do this, what can they do for their constituents? It really begs that question. So what we're looking for them to do is to tell the leadership right now, they should not be having their Starbucks. They should be in the leadership, the leader's office right now, telling them that if they don't get George Santos out today, if they don't get the Republicans to vote out George Santos today, that those 5 will actually no longer vote in lockstep with the Republicans' agenda and hold them hostage until this is done, and this is done right. So with that, I thank you all. I'm going to turn this over to my friends, and I didn't actually say. Let me tell you first quickly what Concerned Citizens of New York '03 is. We are a nonpartisan ad hoc group that came together in January. None of us knew each other. We were just joined by the hip because we were so outraged and disgusted by having George Santos represent us. And so I'm from Great Neck. I lived in the district over 30 years. We're going to hear now from Kim Kaiserman, who is from Port Washington and has also been in the district quite a while, and was also on our steering committee. So, Kim.
Thank you, Jody, and thank you to Congressman Goldman for the opportunity to be here today. As Jody said, my name is Kim Kaiserman. I'm from Port Washington. I have lived in the district since 2001. When our organization, Concerned Citizens of New York 03, first came together 11 months ago, the Santos story was big news. People were outraged. And frankly, we thought George Santos would resign or be expelled in a matter of a few weeks. Pretty soon it became clear that it was not going to be that easy. In our fast-paced media age, we were going to have to work very hard to keep the Santos story in the public eye and to ensure that we, Santos's constituents, remained at the center of it. That's why we came down here to Washington, D.C. for this historic vote. As a reminder that well more than 700,000 people live in New York 03, and we have the same rights and needs as every American. For 11 months, we have been without meaningful representation in Congress, without an advocate to bring home needed funds, without a serious policymaker to amplify our voices, without a competent office to provide constituent services to vulnerable people. Every day that George Santos has been in Congress has been a day that our rights have been disregarded and our needs unmet. Sitting in the House yesterday, we heard George Santos call his colleagues hypocrites and part of the swamp as he blamed them for Americans' distrust in government. He presented himself as the victim, not the voters he lied to, the donors he defrauded, or the constituents he has denied representation. This was no surprise. It was exactly the kind of nonsense, deflecting, and excuse-making that we expect to hear from George Santos. What was disturbing was to hear some members of Congress still covering for this con man by arguing that expulsion would deny him due process and violate precedent. Both of these arguments are deeply flawed. George Santos has been afforded due process through the House Ethics Committee, and Congress's constitutional power to expel does not rest on criminal conviction. The Ethics Committee findings show what we have known all along for 11 months now, that the fraud Santos perpetrated on voters is unprecedented, and that to allow him to remain in Congress for his entire term would actually set a dangerous new precedent, normalizing blatant criminality and denigrating the rights of voters. We hope that members of Congress, all of them, in both parties, will see through these arguments and vote to expel George Santos today. Thank you.
And now we're going to hear from Susan Naftal. Susan is from Plainview, on the other end of the district from where I live. Susan?
Also, I want you to know that I've always lived in this district. I grew up in this district. I moved back with my family, and so I'm a permanent New York 03 resident. And I think it's important to know what Santos has put the country through his lies and through his fraud. New York 03 never voted for this man. We voted for a carefully crafted illusion that he created to try to hit on different segments of our population. His mother died in 9/11. He knew that in our district, unfortunately, we lost many, many people during 9/11, and it's a real sore point for all of us. His grandparents survived the Holocaust. Well, our district also has a very large population of Jewish people and played on our historical pain to try to gain votes like that. That he graduated from Baruch College with 2 degrees and worked on Wall Street. Well, many of our residents actually do work on Wall Street and have 4-year diplomas that they actually earned. that he had employees that died in the Pulse nightclub shooting. Well, many of our constituents are gay, have loved ones who are gay, and who are strong supporters of the LGBTQ plus community. We heard in the debates representatives saying that they can't go against the will of the constituents. Well, we're here to tell you the will of the constituents is to remove this fraud. Over 80% of us, that's both Democrats and Republicans, as polled, want him gone. It's not a partisan issue, it's a right and wrong issue. Santos tried to play the victim yesterday, as you all heard. We, the constituents, are the victims. We have no meaningful representation and have not had that for almost a year now. We deserve and demand better. One more thing. We all know that Santos likes to wear those red designer shoes that he probably paid with defrauded funds. I'm wondering if he's going to like his orange jumpsuit as much as he appreciates his red shoes. Thank you.
Okay, take some questions.
Congressman, say that this vote is coming up, it's tight, they're not whipping it on the Republican side at least. If it fails, are you done putting forward privilege resolutions to expel?
We'll have to figure that out. The reason we put forward our resolution this week was to make sure that the House of Representatives voted on the expulsion of George Santos this week, which was the first week in session after that ethics report was released. To be honest, I haven't really thought much about what would happen if the Republicans vote to protect him again, because it's almost inconceivable to me that anybody could read that ethics report and not recognize that partisan politics to the side, slim majorities are a given, but that this person is a pox on our house and cannot continue to vote on legislation, cannot continue to abandon these constituents who have no constituent services. This is as clear an example of right and wrong as the Congress ever faces. And that is what the question is are you going to protect the slim majority that you have for a corrupt member of Congress who is only a member because of his deception and fraud? Or are you going to recognize that the reputation, the integrity of the Congress of the United States is more than one more vote on your majority, and that we have to set a standard of who we allow ourselves to be associated with, who we allow the American people to depend on, who votes on critical legislation that affects 330 million Americans. This is not a political game, but this entire year, the House Republicans have played politics only. They have gotten nothing done. They have done nothing for the American people. And now, if they don't vote George Santos out, they are admitting that they are purely a partisan, political animal interested solely in power and not interested in the American people.
Congressman, how confident are you that this vote to expel George Santos will go through today?
As I said, if I just look at the facts, I can't imagine how anyone would not vote to expel him. But my understanding is that the Speaker of the House, a man who considers himself to be very religious and who cites the Bible repeatedly as his guidance, has indicated that he is going to protect a man who has abused religion, who has taken advantage of Jewish people in his district, has done every single thing the Bible tells you not to do. And yet for his own power, not because of whatever integrity he may have, the Speaker of the House is going to vote to protect George Santos? Is that for real? It's baffling to me. So I'm shocked that I have to answer the question about whether I'm confident that he will be expelled, because It's unimaginable that he wouldn't be, but with this Republican Party, I can't guarantee anything.
Question for the voters of District 3. You know, people like to joke around about the low approval rating of Congress, but you are the District 3 voters who felt strongly enough to come down here, I imagine in some essence to try to defend the character of the body. So I want to ask one or all of you, do you think this saga has done lasting damage to voters' perceptions of Congress?
I really do. I think,
to the mic, to the mic.
Sorry.
To the microphone.
I think that this is exactly the kind of thing that breeds cynicism and erodes democracy. That's a big part of the reason that I got involved in this. As I said, I actually thought, maybe naively, that it would be a few weeks, that we would kind of make a ruckus and say this is not acceptable to us, and people would listen. And we actually thought maybe George Santos would listen and resign. So I think it does lasting damage for not just this one man, but such a large group of people to be so callous about our interests and rights and needs and allow this to go on for 11 months. I really hope it'll end today, but even if it ends today, there needs to be a reckoning about the 11 months.
I would just add, I think Kim makes a really important point. Democracy is under attack by the Republican Party. We see it with Donald Trump. We see it with his authoritarian desires. If George Santos is allowed to perpetrate a fraud on the voters as he has by the Republican Party, then that is significantly undermining our democracy. That is laying a terrible precedent and a terrible foundation for what our democratic government looks like. And this is a big, big vote today. This is a vote about whether or not you believe in American democracy or whether or not you believe in cynical partisanship.
Last question.
Congressman, if this vote does go through and Congressman Santos is removed, do you know if this is going to be an immediate removal? Will he instantly be taken out of his office? And then I also just want to get your thoughts on, if it does not go through, what do you think this does for Congress itself over the next year until it's out?
Yeah, my understanding is if he is expelled, he's gone. And so there will then, the governor of New York then has 10 days to set an election, a special election within the following 70 to 80 days. So there will be a special election at the end of February. The county committee chairs will choose a candidate for the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. If the vote, look, the Republican Party is so dysfunctional, it's hard to imagine that they could stoop any lower. The legislation we have had this week is so inconsequential when we're dealing with a war in Israel, a war in Ukraine, a humanitarian crisis in both. We're dealing with threats from China. We're dealing with the fact that we haven't funded the government for the next fiscal year, and they haven't brought a single appropriations bill to the floor this week. They can't even agree amongst themselves. So is this going to have an impact on the Republicans' dysfunction? Probably not. But it will have a significant impact on the integrity and reputation of the Congress of the United States that will last a lot longer than this particular Congress. Thank you all for coming. You guys want to say? Yeah, I got it. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you.
Right here.
This really affects everyone in the country. It affects all of us. It can happen.
And it will if they don't do something about it.
Yeah.
What's going to be reaction? What's going to be
Right. It is like 7 minutes.
You okay?
No, I didn't see Chris Martin. I didn't know what he was wearing.
He really dressed in the nice this morning.
Yeah, I was like, fancy.
Especially, I had to get my towel.
That was my friend Kate I ran into the other day.
What a great turnout.
It was like 2 times in a week.
She worked for it.
Wall Street Journal?
Now she's doing politics.
No, that was like
Everybody else is up right. It's worse for no, it's just political people, that's all. One door downtown to their house from Friday, you know. $1 million guy. I've known him forever. He gets into these things.
I like their long high speed.
Original actors, but he's helping them along. So you can get paid basically script.
In New York Times? I haven't been to watch
The what?
It's been a while since I've been in the thing.
I said, well, I've known him forever. What do you think, Dave? That's so. Bring your head over here.
No, I think we're done for film festivals for this season. Yeah. Yeah, sadly.
I was standing.
There's still so many movies I haven't seen that I need to see. It's now like, I don't really have time or don't want to spend money. I could wait till they're on Netflix, but I hate doing it.
That's good.
I mean, I need to see the season film.
I'll just plug
You
in.
heard of the movie May December?
I'll just plug in the. Don't share us like that. I'll just plug in the.
Like, what, no worries. May December. So, I think it's on Netflix. And it was,
I think I'll drag the FX6 up here.
I think
It's
that
bigger than this.
Charles Melton,
Whatever you want in the front. So,
Well, you're probably better.
the director, I'm sorry, one of the directors could get an Oscar.
he's not gonna.
Like the younger one, was it once in Riverdale? Like he's a teeny kind of a teeny bopper star, but he was
You can ask him, right?
yeah. So I highly recommend seeing it. I thought I wanted Ryan Gosling to win for Barbie, but now I'm like, no, it's Charles Melton. Charles May, yeah.
So votes are at 10:15.
We had 11. We had the vote to be 10:15.
Well, I don't know when the actual
Yeah,
thing is going
the
to be,
actual.
but the series of votes that will unleash the rest of the votes
10:15.
is at 10:15.
Right. All right.
Thank you.
Here we are.
We got that.
Oh, you got that. Okay, all right.
People are antsy. People are antsy.
I think they'll probably walk over. You know.
Before the 11 o'clock thing,
What's that?
will we do it after the, when they finally, when he knows. So.
We do what?
I heard that he survived.
I think it'll survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. I think it'll make it. But it's just, it's there. It's not here, it's there.
Right. Well, that means that this story just, lost all its air. Right? Right. All of its air. That is.
Yeah, we'll stand over there just in case.
For him, he gets a paycheck. Another paycheck. All right?
She couldn't wire it.
The what? Did they have it? Why didn't? What do you got here? So you can look at this.
No, that's okay.
What? You don't want to play. So I can go.
I don't know.
The little gimbal, DJI, the new one.
It's probably like a 35 millimeter.
Well, they actually have wide angle lenses go in front of them. Yeah. It's of course it's like
17.
Yeah. So and wireless mic comes with it. Yeah.
It's also local guys doing shoot news now. Some local guys. The Channel 5 guys.
Yeah. They're using a gimbal
For the for this whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. For everything. I mean,
What kind of camera?
DJI.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like a mobile stick. Yeah, that's the one I have. Yeah. I'd like to do the HC5 stakeout with it. But you got to give the wireless mic to the recorder. You can't.
Oh, you mean the back door?
Huh?
The back door.
Yeah, back door. Running of the bulls. That's what I've always called it, that running of the bulls. Now there are women involved. Didn't used to be. So preventing 50% of the population and you will be representative and so? The Arizona crowd, they were cute. They'd never been to a show. Show up at the guy's office. They're on a convention.
What's up, man? That's what I would do.
Hey, here comes George over here. Just kidding. Come on, guys. Y'all follow that every time. Y'all need a couple of drinks or anything? Everybody good?
I think we're all out, man. Thank you, Congressman. See you soon.
Good job.
I think that, Dave, what you got there is probably the same.
Oh, really?
The same. Maybe this is a little wider. Yeah.
Good night, Chuck.
Oh, I see all the way. I see from the side all the way down. Don't you see? Yeah, no. No, you're cut off. That's not bad. No selfie?
Not at all. Absolutely not. Thank you. I'll take one of you.
We've been here before.
Have a good one.
It's always a busy week for the traffic features.
I like it when the race
There's always a lot of features. I never rest next time I set up vacation.
So how many votes did he need to survive? For the Dems. Two-thirds? So they got to hit two-thirds to get expelled, right? They have to get, and Gates and those guys, they'll vote and keep them just because.
I don't even know how to get to the zone. 2 floors down, I guess.
2 floors down, turn all the way to your left.
Well, I think like, you're going to have to make a choice because
CDFIs, the Community Development Financial Institutions. And why do we support them? Because they could not get loans from the banks in America. And so here we are, the taxpayers, further trying to help small businesses by supporting these community development financial institutions. They were developed because small businesses couldn't get loans. And then we have on the opposite side of an aisle people who are opposing how we can support these small businesses by getting the transparency done that we need to have done. They would rather support the biggest banks in America and have the taxpayers try transparency done that we need to have done. They would rather support the biggest banks in America and have the taxpayers try to do something about small businesses with CDFIs than give their small business an opportunity. I want to tell you, I don't know how they're going to vote on the other side, but this issue is not going to go away. And I want to tell you that the constituents are going to learn in this country who's supporting small businesses. All of this talk and this rhetoric about I love small businesses, I support small business, will not continue to work. The fact of the matter is small businesses are shutting down. They are closing because they don't have access to capital. And so for all of those members on the opposite side of the aisle who took out PPP loans that have been forgiven, you ought to be ashamed, and you ought to not oppose the CFPB from trying to protect these small banks as the courts have told them to do. And so with that, Madam Chair, there's a lot more that can be said. We're going to continue to unveil this information about who is simply spouting rhetoric and who is actually doing something for small businesses. It is unfortunate that we have to fight this hard. We have to do everything that we possibly can because the banks don't want them in their banks. They don't want to be bothered with them. They're too small. We have small businesses who only need $50,000, $75,000 to improve their technology, to be able to take their businesses to a place where they can earn more money. We can't even start to talk about startup capital. None of them get startup capital. If they're able to convince anybody for a little capital to expand their businesses, they will do that. But otherwise, small businesses do not have the support of the Republicans in the House of Representatives.
The gentlewoman's time has expired.
As it is seen here today. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And as my colleagues and I have stated today, my biggest fear is that many lenders may decide to fully exit small business lending due to the overly burdensome collection requirements, or because they just don't want to put their small business customers in an uncomfortable situation. I do not believe this is the outcome Congress or the CFPB intend with implementation of this section of Dodd-Frank. However, I know, as a small business owner myself, if this rule goes into effect, it will not bode well for small businesses seeking the credit needed to grow and support their communities. That's the bottom line. And we need to help small businesses. We need to help them not only create jobs, but to create net worth among their employees. So I urge my colleagues to support this resolution. And Madam Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to the rule, the previous question is ordered on the joint resolution. The question is on the third reading of the joint resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
Joint resolution providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5 United States Code of the rule submitted by the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection relating to small business lending under the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, Regulation B.
The question is on passage of the joint resolution. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
I request a recorded vote.
A recorded.
I'm sorry I interrupted. I have to say it over and over again so I can get this recorded.
Does the gentlewoman request the yeas and nays? The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote of passage of the joint resolution will be followed by a 5-minute vote on adoption of House Resolution 878. This is a 15-minute vote.
On this vote, the yeas are 221, the nays are 202. There are one voting present. The joint resolution is passed without objection. The motion to consider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on the adoption of House Resolution 878, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 878, resolution providing for the expulsion of Representative George Santos from the United States House of Representatives.
The question is on the adoption of the resolution. Members record their vote by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
On this vote, the yeas are 311, the nays are 114, with 2 recorded as present. 2/3 voting in the affirmative, the resolution is adopted, and a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The clerk will notify the governor of the state of New York of the action of the House. Under Clause 5D of Rule 20, the chair announces to the House that in light of the expulsion of the gentleman from New York, Mr. Santos, the whole number of the House is now 434.
One minute.